Welcome to Worlds Collide. Please comment, like, and subscribe for more content. Chapter 12, Reckoning and Revelation. We had fallen asleep with me sitting on the floor and my head next to hers. Shazy slept on the couch. I awoke to the sight of rows of sharp teeth as she yawned and stretched expressively. The sight, first thing when you open your eyes, was a bit unsettling. I checked the time. Shift change wasn't for another 2 hours. Shay grasped my head with claws extended and kissed me. "Good morning," I chortled despite my initial reaction to her hypodermic teeth spread wide in my face. "Good morning, beautiful. You do know we have another 2 hours before shift change?" "Good. I want to explore." She sat up, smiling. "Dress in military uniform." I blinked at her retreating figure in bewilderment. She differed completely from her demeanor the night before. I dressed quickly and met her in the common room. She emerged from her berth at the same time Shro entered unannounced. "Could you braid my mane?" Shay requested of Shro. Shay presented an intimidating figure in her full military attire. The uniform contrasted black against her otherwise long white fur coat. The pants extended loosely to just above her knees. Her top functioned more as a vest than a shirt or jacket, with her name and rank clearly visible on the breast pocket. Around her waist was an ornate belt of burgundy and black. What stood out most was the bond bracelet that contrasted against her fur. My uniform was of similar design, except my pants were black, full-length cargo, and tucked into the top of my tan boots. My top amounted to little more than a t-shirt. The sleeves ended just before my bond band. It too stood out, an exact replica of her gold-swirling designs. I wore no rank, just my name emblazoned on my left chest. "You look stunning," I observed, in a scary way. Shay flashed me a toothy grin. Her people considered it a threatening gesture, but her ears betrayed her expression. "Are you up for a reconnaissance mission, Shro?" Shro wore a similar uniform, except it was trimmed in silver, and she carried a sidearm. "But of course, Hunsai." Her expression was mischievous. I couldn't help but think the mission aimed to disrupt as much orderly operation as possible. We picked up 2 other security personnel dressed in combat armor as we exited. They wore rifles slung over their backs along with their typical loadout. Our first stop was engineering. The senior engineer attempted to deter us with some expletive about us being in a restricted area, but Shay simply ignored his protest. "I have come to inspect the new engine designs," she stated, scowling at the perplexed engineer. He glanced at me and then at the flanking security and swallowed before speaking. "We are capable of nearly twice the forward thrust as our standard counterparts," he began. "The Ravisher also boasts independent navigational thrusters throughout the ship that afford us 6 times the maneuverability. The entire system features tripled redundancy." "And the overthrust tolerance?" Shay inquired casually. She stood with her hands behind her back as she absorbed the scenery around us. 10%, Sai." Shay nodded and turned to a holographic schematic of the thrust systems. "I see my father adapted fighter vector thrusting and applied it on a greater scale." She turned back to the engineer. "Has the threshold been stress tested yet?" The senior engineer shook his head. "I guess it is about time." "Thank you, Trey." Our next stop was the officers' dining hall. The room was filled to more than half capacity. The room contained less than a third by the time we acquired our breakfast. I was pleasantly surprised to find Gracia sitting at a distant table chatting with another female. He smiled expressively as we approached. What made me miss a step was the female sitting with him. She was well-toned with short gray and white tabby fur. Her ears flickered in amusement. "Latra said your training needs work," she remarked without turning. I stepped around the table and froze. Prof. Ray sat looking up at me with her usual stoic expression. "Your mouth is hanging open," she remarked dryly as I slowly took my seat. "You can talk?" I blurted. "Of course she can talk," teased Gracia. Prof. Ray's voice was soft and pleasant. It wasn't what I would have expected after a month of training with her. I frowned at Gracia. "You just have never said anything to me before." She flicked her ears in amusement again. "I didn't need to," she responded flatly. "What about the stalkers?" I still couldn't believe she was here. "I am on special assignment." She took a sip of her water. "Does he always talk too much?" she inquired of Shay. "Not usually," responded Shay, obviously amused. "He usually lets his fingers talk for him." My face burned. "Does he now?" teased Prof. Ray in a dry tone. I should avoid breaking them then. Definitely, said Shay, smiling. Both observed me almost squirm in my seat under their scrutiny. Yes, let's definitely not break my fingers, I croaked. Shay laughed openly, while Profre grunted. What are you trying to accomplish? Interjected Shro suddenly. Your father will definitely hear of our exploits throughout his ship. Shay's expression darkened. My father wants me to assume a role within his empire. I plan to do exactly that, but not in the way he expects. Everyone at the table turned their full attention to her. I plan to force him to accept Mitchell. He either will, or he will denounce me. Are you sure it is wise to provoke him? Queried Gracia. He has already provoked me. He wishes to have me put our child up for adoption and break the bond. Wait, what? Shro stammered, perplexed. It was my turn to grin like a cat who had gotten into the cream. You did not know? Of course we didn't, snapped Shro, not taking her eyes off Shay. How? I could explain, but I need pictures and diagrams, I teased. Stop it, Shay grinned. Mitchell's DNA has shifted more to our own. He shares more in common with us than he does with other humans. He has become genetically compatible with us, thanks to the nanobots I used to heal him while still on Earth. Shay wrapped her tail around my right leg possessively. Does that mean he is going to grow fur? Asked Gracia. That is what I ask, I declared excitedly. Unfortunately not, she chuckled in response. This is classified information. Even my father was kept in the dark about my condition. What is your end goal? Profre asked calmly. Either she already knew or was unfazed by the revelation. Earth possesses an abundance of resources. She held up a hand before I could object. Humans are fierce but also unpredictable. They also reproduce rapidly and thus are an inquisitive species. She looked at me then. I think they would make valuable allies in our conflict against the Stalath. I would like to open dialogue with Earth. How? Inquired Gracia, curious. By taking Mitchell home. The idea astounded me. Shay had never mentioned the idea before. Mitchell understands us. He also knows his own people. I think if we approach them together, they might entertain the idea. They were interrupted by a young officer appearing suddenly. Your father wishes to speak with you, he informed Shay. She gave him an unfriendly smile. Shall we go see what he wants? The officer began to correct her as we all stood in unison, but decided against it. We were led back to the command deck to the captain's briefing room. Trask sat next to the captain and looked up when Shay and I entered the room. The others, with the exception of Profre, had decided it was best to remain outside. Profre stood behind us with her hands resting on her hips. The gesture was not lost on either Trask or the captain. Pra, commanded the captain. You are dismissed. She ignored him. She is attached as Mitchell's security, explained Shay. She stays. The captain glanced at Trask and then back when no advice was forthcoming. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. I have been informed of your access to the engine room, he stated with a commanding voice. While this is not a problem given your rank and status, he pointed at me stiffly, is not permitted in sensitive areas. My mate accompanies me wherever I go, Shay responded in her own professional military tone. Not on my ship, snapped Trask. If I am heir to the business, would that not make it our ship? Shay's expression remained neutral. You control nothing, daughter. You abandoned your responsibilities when you joined the military. Trask's voice dripped with venom. Your pet has no place here. Don't I? She almost purred. I never relinquished control when I joined the military. My mate is privy to my affairs. She smiled then. He holds the right to observe my affairs as the sire to my own heir. The captain looked between us three in confusion. You are with child? It is a child without a father, snarled Trask. He half rose in anger. You forced me to disavow you, Kit. Shay's ears dipped in distress, but she held her ground. That is your choice. I still claim compensation. I claim half of our empire. Trask lunged across the table. He didn't make it all the way. Profre had stepped between us, grabbed his outstretched arm and pinned him. Her once concealed blade tip pressed against the soft underside of his throat. Pra! Barked the captain. Release him! She didn't move until Shay gestured for her to stand down. Trask eased back, wide-eyed. His shock didn't smother the smoldering look they still held. Shay ignored her father in favor of the captain. I request counsel audience as a partner in this male's business. She shot her father a betrayed look. The captain studied them both, perplexed. On one side, he held a responsibility to Trask. On the other, he was a fleet captain. He was the ultimate authority while in command. Very well, Commander. I will relay your request. We are due home in 8 rotations. Thank you, Captain. Shay nodded once before escorting us out. Prafray took up the rear guard as we departed. Shro glanced at her wrist computer 15 minutes after we had left the command deck. That did not take long, she mumbled. Aloud, she stated, Grishru requests an audience. Tell him he can meet us in our office, responded Shay. See to it all recording devices in our room are disabled, except our own. Grishru stood outside our door when we arrived with practiced patience. He said nothing when he followed us into the common room. He even remained silent while Shro and Frey cleared the suite of every bug they had identified. Only when they were seated in the office did he speak. What is your plan? Aren't you Trask's Gra? I distrusted him. He had tried to pressure me to betray humanity. I am Gra to the consortium, not a single person, he asserted in response to my question. Trask just happens to be the face of the consortium. He shifted his attention to Shay. Your actions threaten to destabilize the military's access to desperately needed resources. Shay shook her head. I understand the importance of the resources we possess. I have no intention of cutting them off. I do have an idea for reallocation of those resources that would benefit everyone. Grishru's ears perked in interest. Would you be willing to share your idea? Not until we reach the council, she answered. You are playing a risky game, Shacy. Shay let slip her pleasant demeanor. I am playing no game. My sire threatened my mate. He has disavowed me because I refused to forsake Mitchel. Grishru nodded, understanding. I see. I will take my leave with your permission. Shay nodded. He bowed respectfully and left. I do not trust him, I voiced once he was gone. Neither do I. Shay let out a pent-up sigh. We face an uncertain future. Couldn't we just find a colony in a remote area of space? We were interrupted by Shro entering the room. Your mother demands to see you, Sigh. Admit her, please, Shay waved. Shermar stormed into the office. You will fix this. Shay's expression turned pained. I have broken nothing. Her voice was controlled, but just barely. Why must you provoke your father? Shermar adopted an accusatory tone. He wanted us to be a family once more. With stipulations, countered Shay. He demanded I give up my mate and our offspring. That is impossible, Shermar countered. He is human. She shot me an irritated glance. Shay's expression softened. It is true, Mother. Your mate is not my father. He made that explicitly clear. Her expression hardened again. He sought to take away what is most important to me. I will take away what is most important to him. The response stung Shermar. Even I could perceive the tears beginning to form. I averted my gaze toward the floor to allow her privacy. Your father and I love you. Please see reason. Mitchel is not one of us. I love you too, Mother. Shay clearly didn't include her father in the sentiment. It wasn't lost on Shermar. Mitchel and I are one. Shrinskask Mishau. Shermar's eyes widened. No. Good day, Mother. Shay's eyes no longer carried the gentleness she had first shown. Her mother said nothing more. She turned and walked out of the room with her ears low and her tail still. Shay collapsed in her chair, weeping quietly. I laid a hand on her shoulder and squeezed gently. I will be outside when you need me, I whispered. As much as seeing her distress tore at my soul, there was nothing I could do for her in that moment. She needed to have the room to herself. I closed the door behind me and looked at our two companions. She needs time. Nobody else is to bother her until she is ready. Both nodded in understanding. There will be security outside your door. We will be next door if you need us, informed Shro. Thank you, I expressed honestly, for everything. 2 other diplomats called on us that evening, but both were politely turned away with the promise of a later meeting. Meals arrived for us both during shift change by way of Prafray. Shay had emerged from the office disheveled. Her eyes were swollen and bloodshot. She pulled me into a brief embrace that made my heart melt, and then went to bed. I spent my evenings studying Crescent law pertaining to the dissolution of business partnerships. I only stopped to offer Shay dinner, which she refused with a shake of her head. After 6 hours of studying the relevant laws, I felt more confused than when I started. Most seemed straightforward, except there appeared to be no precedent between different species. There was no overlap that I could discern. I shifted my attention to trade laws and agreements, but those seemed to be distinctly divisible. I owned nothing and thus was not relevant to our case. I did find the protocols governing trade interesting, however. I was interrupted by Shay settling on the sofa with me. She leaned her head onto my shoulder, and I rested my head against hers. Why can't my people accept us? I can't imagine my own people will be more accepting, I murmured. Some humans still harbor resentment against people of different color. Really? Shay sounded surprised. I nodded. Humans have enslaved each other for thousands of years. We only broke from the practice less than 200 years ago. She leaned back, looking at me curiously. Why? I shrugged. Profit mostly. A sense of superiority against those we found less fortunate. It is no longer commonplace, but the repercussions of that time still resonate. Is that why humans war among each other? She inquired. Territory and resources mostly. I wrapped my arm around her affectionately. Are you sure you want to listen to all this now? It is distracting, she remarked with a sigh. Besides, I want to understand your people better. Governments are driven by territory and resources. Some, like the United States, Russia, and China, are driven by resources and technology. What they cannot acquire through purchase or trade, they will often steal from each other given the chance. I sighed heavily. I seem to be making everyone's case for them. Maybe we are savages. I do not believe that, she whispered. You are not a savage. Maybe I'm broken, I chuckled. I struggle with empathy since I was in combat. Empathy? She asked, confused by the term. Lack the ability to express or understand emotion, I clarified. We chatted well into the night. It had become common practice for us as of late. There was little for us to do during our journey since boarding. We spoke of similarities and differences between humans and Krathen. We discussed the possible benefit humanity could offer in the ongoing conflict. We spoke of the war and how it had begun over territorial disputes. The Stalath claimed dominion over a large swatch of Krathen-claimed space and had wiped out several colonies in those areas without warning. All diplomatic approaches had been outright rejected. Several attempts had even resulted in the diplomat being killed. How is the war progressing? I inquired eventually. Not well, I'm afraid, she muttered sleepily. We are losing territory every year. Colonies are wiped out. Most of our engagements result in heavy losses. So that is why you want to approach my people. Is that why you were there? I probed. She nodded. A civilian science ship discovered your planet nearly 5 planetary cycles ago. The reports they sent back fascinated our military. My team was dispatched to perform a detailed study of your people. What would have happened had you not crashed? I would not have met you, she rocked to her feet. It is late. I want to sleep.
Join us for more from Worlds Collide.